College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
Today's topic is the influence of sports and athletics on life experiences. And I know many of our viewers have been listening to debates around the country about the role of physical education in our educational system and how we should train individuals to tie together a very sound mental health with a physical conditioning. We have a debate about the role of physical education in our schools, as I just mentioned. Also, we want to talk about the training and the coaching and the participating in sports and what that does to all aspects of your life. And we're very pleased to welcome to the program a person who spent many years in this field, and our guest is Mary Jean Hickemeyer. We're very happy to have her with us today. She spent 32 years coaching and also teaching physical education. Our guest holds her degree in physical education with a minor in speech and drama from Bemidji State University in Minnesota, and she taught in that system in the state of Minnesota for 2 years, and then she came to Idaho and for 30 years taught at Kellogg High School. She particularly was a pioneer dealing with women's sports, and she coached the women's track and volleyball at her school, and she served in a lot of administrative positions in the relation to sports. She was on the State Board of Control. She also was the president of the District 1 in North Idaho of the Coaches Association for 12 or 13 years. Mary Jean, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our program, and we are pleased that you have come to visit with us and to talk about something that we haven't dealt with on this program in a very long time. And again, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here.
And as always, I'm so pleased to have one of our regular panelists, Steve Shink, who is the Dean of College Relations and Development at Idaho College, and we shall commence today's questioning with Steve Shink.
Thank you, Tony. Mary Jean, Tony did such an excellent job of giving us your background that I think I'm going to move to what I had originally thought would be my second question, and that is, how is it that someone who grew up and was educated at a time when really there were very few opportunities for women to participate in athletics, how is it that you got interested in physical education and coaching as a career?
Well, I probably became interested in the field of physical education because my brother had majored in physical education, and he was 9 years older, and he taught and coached. And I think the reason I got interested in finding more things for the girls to do competitively is because I taught just girls PE, and they were so anxious and so ready for anything that I could give them and feed them. I mean, we made everything into not only a learning experience, but some competition for them, and they just wanted more and more. So probably in the middle 1960s, the state of Washington ran an AAU program in track, and I started with youngsters from elementary school on up to high school and becoming involved in that, and they had a wonderful time and enjoyed it. And also in those days we had a very active association in our high schools called GAA, Girls Athletic Association, and I ran a very large program in Kellogg. Ruth Palm in Coeur d'Alene ran one, Char Foss ran one, and I'm sure there was some of the other teachers, Lakeland, Post Falls, and so on, that also had the programs. And we did do, or tried to do, some competition within those programs. We would have an invitational basketball play day and invitational dance play day, and they just stayed, the girls just stayed up everything. It was marvelous. I mean, we had groups with maybe 100 young ladies in, so that's how I began.
Mary Jean, give me a little bit of a history lesson in women's sports at the high school level. Mm-hmm. Did opportunities come first through the high schools, or did they come through what I tend to think of more as club organizations? AAU to me is an athletic program sanctioned outside of the high school. How did it develop?
Well, as the girls wanted more and more competitiveness within the GAA and within our physical education programs, to be very honest, we bombarded our principals and our superintendents, and there were several of us here in North Idaho, and our first success was probably in letting us have an invitational girls basketball tournament in Moscow, and I think there were like 8 schools in Idaho invited. But you know, our philosophy was they could only say no, so we kept asking and asking and asking until it was almost like they got tired of telling us no. So you know, finally they approved it, and we moved into basketball first, track first, and then volleyball followed that. So
good for you.
So yes, it was marvelous. I was happy, and we had a lot of young ladies that were happy. So.
One of the other areas I want to get to, Steve's done a wonderful job talking about how it came about, and your occupation in particular was expanded because of this very much need to have women to have the same right as men. And I know it's even gone much further since your retirement. You retired in 1989. And the federal government's also become involved with regulations to say that we must have equity. I'd like to move into another area that affects both women and men in sports and take advantage of our title, which is the influence of sports on one's life experiences. As Steve said, we have this wealth of experience with you, and we wish to take advantage of it. We hear pros and cons. How much time should young people spend in sports versus their academic performance or jobs they might have and so forth? What does athletics do for young people? How does it change their life and affect them in a positive way?
Well, first of all, I think that they're being involved in such a program, they learn to work with others, which is very important. Teamwork, if you wish to call it that. I think that if it's a positive experience, and we hope that it is, it develops their character, their self-image, their self-confidence. They learn self-discipline. And I don't think that I probably meet anyone that was in athletics that doesn't remember the good times and the fun. I do believe it also should be fun for them and a learning experience, even though it is a competitive sport.
So I hear you saying that there's a lot of different components here, and they're not all the same. One is that it teaches discipline, which you have to have in life and other occupations, both whatever you do is a lifetime occupation, but also in your relationships and all, there's even discipline there, isn't there, in controlling yourself and your attitudes. But also here you say, in addition to discipline, that it is, you get to know more about yourself, self-esteem, confidence.
Very much so.
Let me ask another question along that line. Some years ago, I used to teach a college tennis team, and one thing I found about that was interesting, both from my perspective and the players, that you have almost an immediate goal. At least at the college level, you're recruiting, and the fall starts and it's a spring sport, but you're only going to know within 9 months if there's been success to, 1, the recruiting, and number 2, they working as a unit in a team. Is that one of the things that teaches certain things? So many goals we have are very off at a distance or a long time, and that isn't. Does that teach that if you do certain things and you work hard that you can see a result rather quickly?
I think so. I think within any seasonal sport that you're going to see that. And I think it's important as a coach and as a teacher that you dwell on the positive aspects. I can remember at sometimes that maybe I'd pick up on the things that they weren't doing well, and I would say, you need to do this better. Why don't you do this? And they said, you're only looking at the bad things I'm doing. How about looking at the good things? I learned that very early in life in a physical education situation. And I thought, this is something that we do need to dwell on. Too often we are constantly looking at the things that need to be improved instead of giving credit for the things that they have done well.
Share with our viewers, too, what it does to personal relationships. I would assume that in sports where individuals, like in high school particularly, are together for a number of years, that they build really close friendships, not only among the players themselves, but with the families that are involved that could last a lifetime? They
really do. Most of them have been in the programs all the way through school and have the same interests, and it's like a family. They, they just they support each other. If somebody's having a bad day, they talk them up, and they just look out for each other. And I would like to go back and say that, yes, you learn to develop relationships. I had a volleyball team once at an invitational play day that was squabbling, and girls sometimes can be a little nitpicky, and I had talked to them and wasn't getting any results. So I put them in my office, and I said, don't come out until you have resolved, because I don't know what to do with you at this point. And within 10, 15 minutes, they were out and they were a team again. So it's something that, teamwork. They have to have respect for each other. You also have to have team leaders that can take over and earn that respect.
Thank you, Steve Shink.
Mary Jean, where'd you learn to coach? I'm just fascinated by that story and the decision to put those girls in the office and let them work it out themselves. How do you learn those things?
I learned to coach. I probably started coaching as a teacher. That was my biggest strength. And to be very honest, I didn't have much background. I went to any workshops, seminars, bought books and read them, and finally, picked up just as much. I learned along with the kids and tried to stay one step ahead. And they had some marvelous clinics in those days. I think I was a stronger track coach than I was a volleyball coach. I seemed to pick up on that a little easier. And so it was just all part of, to me, an expanded physical education. I wanted as much experience for those girls and the opportunity to compete as they could possibly get.
Well, let's roll the clock back a little bit further. You had an older brother who taught physical education. Yes. I'm going to guess that he was a good athlete.
Yes, he
was. Were you a good athlete?
Well, I really don't know.
You didn't have that opportunity.
Because I didn't have the opportunity. I, as an 8th grader, I made the high school basketball team, and then I moved, that was in Minnesota, I moved to Mullen, Idaho, where they didn't have that, but we had a town team, and I played girls basketball. But at that time, it was half court, guards on one side, forwards on the other. Mm-hmm. So that's really the only competition that I had ever taken part in.
And so I think I know the answer to my next question. You never had an opportunity to play volleyball competitively.
No, when I played volleyball in college, in a play day level, mm-hmm. you could hit it twice yourself. So it was a big, big challenge for me to go into the power volleyball aspect. I really had a lot to learn. And I guess I could say that I probably didn't know as much as I'd like to have known, and probably, didn't do the things I would like to have. But I think I kept the kids in the program and competing out of their respect and loyalty, and maybe not out of the knowledge that I knew a whole lot. So that's.
Let's. I want to explore the progression that has taken place in women's athletics over the years. I remember half-court basketball for women. That's all that was available when I was a high school student. What are the differences that you see in women's athletics at the high school level today?
Well, it's become much more competitive, much more emphasis on winning. I was interested in winning, but winning wasn't the main goal I was after. It was nice to win, but life went on if you didn't. So I think girls' athletics are much more competitive. There's a lot of emphasis now on doing as well as you can in preparation or hopefulness that you can get a college scholarship and earn your way through school on that. And it's just more highly disciplined, and I mean the skill level has risen so much since I coached that there's almost no comparison now.
Are we at a point yet, do you think, where there is reasonable parity between men's and women's athletics at the high school level?
Not quite, but it's getting there. It's getting there. I have noticed just your public support that there's getting to be more support for women's and girls' athletics all the way through, and of course, if a successful program means there's more support, but the gyms are filling in support of these activities.
And if Tony will let me, I'm going to ask one more quick question. My father-in-law is a wonderful, now 89-year-old, pretty conservative German, and his daughter was unthinkable that she would participate in athletics. Young women just didn't do that. Did you face much of a battle when you started your programs with parents who didn't really understand the need for young women to be involved in athletics, or were they welcoming it just as their daughters were?
I think they welcomed it. I'm not sure they understood it. I think part of my acceptance of coaching was because I had taught for many years before I did start coaching, so I had a lot of families. They were familiar with me and my programs, and so therefore I got support. I can remember going out and trying to talk some families into allowing their daughters to participate. And some of them, no, it wasn't important. They didn't want to make the effort, to drive them into practice and out of practice. And I would do as much as I could, and when I finally, was like kind of the head against the wall, then I gave up if I couldn't get them out. So,
thank you.
Every coach that I've ever talked to that's had a lot of teams over years have addressed this next question, and that is, you analyze a team when you put it together, and obviously as a coach you have to anticipate what's the potential of winning the conference or regionals or state. And as you look back on that, as an expert, you can say, this particular team has the greatest physical ability of any team I've ever had. But they wind up sometimes not winning the regionals like a team who has less physical ability but has something else. It's very evasive, that is, it's internal and its attitude. Would you share with us your experience over the years about that and what makes a team very satisfying, if you agree with that thesis that it's not always the team that appears on paper to be the best that will wind up most successful?
That's very true, and I can remember that one of the most satisfying seasons I coached girls volleyball, we did not have a winning record, but they were an easy group to work with, so it was very pleasant that way. And yes, I've had teams before that I can remember, the writing in the newspapers about how, Kellogg is in the running and maybe they'll take the state title, and kind of a lot of pressure put on us media-wise. And we got down to Boise, and it's a whole other experience, or was in those days, for North Idaho to go down to Boise, much larger facility. I'm thinking of track right now. The big university stadium, and all the people that come out and watch, and here we are from Kellogg, Idaho, and it's a little scary.
So that can affect the outcome.
Right,
too.
and I think too that when you're looking at a young team, I think they are very much affected by all of that, by the atmosphere and environment that's going on at that time. And I think as they mature as a student and as an athlete, that come their junior and senior year, they're more apt to do better.
Let's back up and let's take just your home matches or meets, whatever it might be, and they're in a comfortable environment, they're in a friendly environment, and yet the teams will not perform the same. That is, again, I'm back to my question of sometimes, did you ever have a team that surprised you? They went beyond what you anticipated, and I guess I'm trying to ask you to deal with something that's really maybe very difficult to, and is what's internal that causes that to happen? Did you see any particular characteristics by some athletes that gave them such determination?
Yes. Probably my biggest achievement and one of my most happiest moments was when my track team won the state in 1985. And they were so attuned to each other that I had a 400 relay team that did not use a visual or even a command on the last handoff. These two girls had worked together for 4 years, and they told me it was like mental telepathy. They knew what was in the other person's mind. And it was a team like that. It was a small group, 10 people that actually scored or placed and scored at state, and very close, and they had been together for 4 years. And it just was a marvelous feeling. And I, ever the pessimist, could not believe we were going to win the state. And I can remember when the girls say, "We're going to win it, Mrs. H. We're going to win it." And I'd say, no, let's wait. We got to wait till the last time. I just don't know about this, and so it was.
So they had the attitude. They believed in themselves.
Oh yes, they did, very definitely.
And it sounds like that was one, and two, that each one of them was tough mentally and physically. And then third, they had again, since it's a team sport, they had that harmony they needed.
Yes, they did.
Like you would on a basketball team. So
right.
The other question before I go back to Steve is that maybe individuals go to different kinds of sports. If you are very much a team player, you'd look at a sport like that. If you were much an individualist, maybe it would be golf or tennis or something.
Right. It's difficult in track. Each event is scored separately, of course, and you are an individual competing. But yet, to win a meet, it's the complete makeup of your team.
But a relay team, you'd have a team effort.
Yes, very definitely.
Or a volleyball team.
Right.
Steve Sheen.
I've got to follow up on the state championship just to know. I'm trying to go back a long time in my memory, but it seems to me that in Missouri there was a limit in high school track. You could compete in 2 or 3 individual events in one relay. Did you have that same?
They could compete in 4 total events.
4 total events. So that makes it especially difficult for a small team like that, because it's not like they can just keep competing and competing.
Yes, I had. I had several outstanding athletes, and of course it was a small group. But I had one sprinter that took first in 2 events and second in 2 events, very outstanding. And, then a strong individual like in the high jump, and a strong individual in the shot put. And so they were just a marvelous group of girls that I'll just never forget. I still hear from them, and it's a close relationship that I have with them.
That's marvelous. Tell me a little bit about the transition that you've observed from competitive athletics, either at the high school or at the college level, to lifetime sports. Do you feel that the girls you coached, many of them, have continued to make some sort of physical activity and fitness a part of their lives as they've? I know before the show we were talking, you've been through several generations of families that you've coached now.
Yes, I think so. I think that they're more attuned to these things. I think they participate in like recreational activities that are available for them. I think they're more apt to encourage their own children to participate, knowing the advantages that that they had and enjoyed about being in sports. I just recently received a letter from a young lady I had that graduated in the mid-60s. And she had taught physical education and coached for 27 years, and she's retiring. And again, she relayed to me how much she enjoyed my teaching and how much effect I had with how she went along with her career. And I guess to me, it's one of the most rewarding things in the world is to have these young ladies come back and be happy to see you and remember the good things.
I tell you that you made a difference in their lives.
Yes.
That must be very special. Well, since we're talking about children, your own children, 3,
yes,
2 boys and a girl, all good athletes.
That's right.
Have they maintained? One of them, in fact, is in the studio with us today.
Yes.
Have they? And we'll embarrass her if we can. That's always our goal here. Have they maintained an interest in athletics and fitness?
Yes, they have. My daughter Lori has competed and still plays recreational volleyball. She went to NIC on a volleyball scholarship and thoroughly loved it. She has 2 sons. She and her husband Keith have 2 sons, and they're both involved in every seasonal activity there is. My oldest son, who was an outstanding athlete, played all activities and recreational activities until his ankle gave out, and he golfs, however. And he has a daughter that plays AAU basketball and volleyball and has competed for the national teams and goes to nationals. And my middle son has just had his first child at age 39, and we will see how he raises his child.
Let me, in this, I don't know how much more time we're going to have, maybe my last question before I go back to Tony, but and I'm going to admit my ignorance here up front. So what I'm saying is my impression, not what I know to be true. My impression is that competitive athletics at the high school and college level are as strong or stronger than they've ever been in recent history. But my impression is also that physical education maybe has been de-emphasized.
Yes, it has, and I disagree completely with that. I was brought up with the idea that a strong human being was both mentally, physically, and emotionally prepared to face life. And one of the greatest achievements in my life was achieving more physical education in schools and starting the elementary physical education program. So therefore, I don't agree with it. I don't understand the reasoning for it. I think it's a big mistake. I think some of the neatest kids that I had that really appreciated it were maybe the straight A students that had spent a lot of time reading, and not that that's bad, and book learning, so to speak, and got into physical education and found out how enjoyable it can be and how they could hold their own and not necessarily, put the grade average back down just by taking a class in PE. So, no, I don't agree with this trend. I don't understand it.
Well, my feeling, I mean, competitive athletics are wonderful, and I was fortunate enough to be able to participate, but there are a lot of people who can't. And I think that physical activity is important to everybody. So that's something I was concerned about.
Right, and I think in today's competitive world, you're not getting the numbers. You're getting the best of the best, and the other kids are kind of falling by the wayside. And if you don't have, if they're not in physical education or an intramural program, they get absolutely no training, no background, no participation, and that's a big minus in my book.
I agree. Thank you.
Mary Jean, you would be proud of Steve Shink and I. We both continue to be active. He's a golfer. I mean, he's a very avid golfer, and I hear from different sources he's a good golfer. And I attempt to play tennis. I enjoy it very much. And I would agree with you on what Steve was saying, that particularly if you have a hard day and you have a lot of mental challenges to go out, it's relaxing.
That's
it's
right.
healthy for you. And also I work out and you even physically feel better. We're just about out of time, and I would just like to end on a note in a minute with, since you've coached a long time, can you give us quickly a wonderful memory you have or a disappointment you have? What is fun or what is not fun about coaching?
Well, my biggest memorable achievement and moment in my life was probably when my team won the state track meet. That was a big plus for me. I'm trying to think of some of the other things that have happened. When I left teaching in the spring of 1989, my students gave me an assembly, which I was totally unprepared for.
I've seen some of those photographs. Wonderful party.
Oh, it was just so neat, and they had just done a marvelous job.
Reminded you why you did it. On that note, I have to bring the program to conclusion. On behalf of Steve Shink and our staff, Mary Jean Hinklemeyer, it's been wonderful to interview you, and congratulations to a career, and I know many people have enjoyed life because of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've enjoyed this program as much as we have enjoyed bringing it to you, and it's an interesting topic to deal with, and I invite you to be with us again next week at this same time. We'll discuss another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.